All right, here we are with Ricky. Ricky surprisingly decided to hang out with us on Christmas Eve. So, Ricky, we
Wait,
want
wait,
to.
wait, 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 wait. What's surprising about that?
Well, a lot of people take the holidays off of work.
I don't consider this work for one, but I do. I don't take time off for work ever, but the time that I do feel that I need to take off every year is this time between Christmas and the New Year. Um, but I don't consider this work. I consider this like church.
Whoa. Wow, we're having a revelation. I mean, I don't really consider this work either. I mean, it is part of my work day because, we're in a TV studio, but I always feel like I'm hanging out with my friend Ricky. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, time to hang out with Ricky. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
can I show you
For
what I
me,
got
it's
myself?
time to yell at people. I tell my wife I'm going up to yell at some people. But
I love how you mainly yell at Debbie DeStefano, who is like the most chill person ever.
yeah,
Can I show you what I got myself for Christmas?
please.
Check this out. My new belt.
Oh wow,
Is
that is
that big
nice.
enough for you?
It's so bling 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 bling.
Dude,
Yes.
it's gonna bling me up at Norwalk. I'll be like the Kid Rock of astrology.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so well, I'm glad you don't consider this work. That is, promising. Okay, it's definitely not laborious. Oh wait, Jenna's here. Wait, why can't you see that? Oh, Jenna says my belt is fancy. Why? Okay, now I can see it. Okay, so today I thought we could talk about something really relevant that's not holiday specific, which is on giving and receiving.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. Do you have any thoughts off the bat on like giving versus receiving or that whole exchange?
Yeah. My first question is: do you have the ability to give something that you haven't received?
Hmm. How so? I
Well,
guess you
I mean,
had give.
it's a philosophical question, but to me, if you haven't received anything, then what do you have to give?
Hmm. I guess babies do enter in receiving a lot of stuff. Babies give back in like cuteness and laughs or whatever, but we come in receiving, I guess.
And we have to, otherwise, right? The baby has to take in food before it can do anything. If that baby doesn't take anything in, that baby perishes. Whether that's taking in love, a hug, food, that there has to be some kind of taking in before we have anything to actually give.
Hmm, that's a really good point. I mean, maybe that's why I am so giving in my old age, is that I've received so much that if I don't give out what I've received, then I just end up hoarding a bunch of stuff that I've received.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
In football, there's so many coaches have to, so many one-liners, so many sayings, and there's a decent amount about giving and receiving. A famous coach by the name of Darrell Royal coached at the University of Texas, and my coach when I was in school used one of Coach Royal's quotes over and over again, and he said, "What you give, you keep, and what you keep, you lose."
Hmm.
And it's a football coach explaining this because in football, the main thing you have to give is you have to give effort. You know,
Interesting.
is you have to give effort.
Yeah, we always think of giving as gifts, but it's like if you look at the love language, like giving someone your quality time is a huge gift. Like I would rather have time from a lot of my friends than something from them. You know, so what other things can we give other than objects? I suppose affection.
I think the most valuable, one of the most, at least for me, in Gemini Sun, oh, Jupiter and Gemini, I think one of the most valuable things we can give people is information. Is information.
That's actually really groundbreaking to hear you say that because that's what we do as astrologers. People think that astrology reading should be magical, and they always think the magic is us like guessing stuff and trying to predict things. But I think the magic is the information we give.
Yeah, I was speaking to one of my students, and she was she was having a conversation with me and with herself about how much to charge for consultations. You know, and the first thing I said, "What are you selling? What are you offering?" And she said, "My time." And I started laughing. I said, "Your time?
Mm,
What makes you think your time is valuable to someone else? To me, it's not the time. It's not the time that you're charging for. Hopefully, it's what a value you have to offer during that time."
interesting.
And during that time that you're interacting with the person, but also all of the time you've spent thinking about their chart, thinking about astrology, thinking about life, of what you've done with that time, what you've given yourself, what you've taken in, what you've received, to me has to be the core of what you're offering.
Mm.
And what we landed on is what she's offering is information. And there's so many different kinds of information, but the way that I teach astrology, the information we're offering to people is a better story.
It's
Because
like
to me,
narrative.
stories,
It's narrative
100%.
therapy.
It
Sorry.
sure is. It sure is. And it would seem silly, but I had a mentor, and he was a bodywork mentor, my craniosacral teacher, and he spends half of the time teaching us how to treat, but the other half of the time he spends sharing stories. And he says, the bards had to memorize 100 stories, and how valuable a good story is. And when I say a good story, there's a level of accuracy to what someone is experiencing that makes it come alive and helps them feel empowered that they can engage meaningfully with whatever is going on in their lives.
Interesting. Well, you're making me think of, and Jenna, feel free to chime in any way with questions or comments. Jenna's in the room with us.
Hey, Jenna.
Uh, you're making me think of how astrology students have to sit and listen for a long time, and then all of a sudden they kind of fill up and they start wanting to give out what they've heard or learned, right? But it's like there's this point where you tip over and like I'm full of receiving, like it's more time for me to give this whole thing, kind of thing. And I think that's don't you think that's a real thing in the astrologer's path? Is like you get full of it and then it starts to spill out around you, and then if you don't give it, I guess you can't have it according to your coach.
I think it stops once you get full and you're not giving. There's nothing, right. Nothing else can get in for you to receive. And it's interesting you say that, because I got to the midpoint of my astrological training and I started to feel like I needed to give, because I was taking in so much. And we all have this experience of, do I know enough? Am I going to do damage to the person? Am I going to make any sense? And I think when you get to a point where you're so full, it's like it doesn't really matter. You have to start to share what you've taken in order to allow more to come in and to increase the quality of what's coming out. But there are distinct moments of feeling I should be giving more, and then feeling that tip over when I started to give more, is it did allow me to fill up more, so I actually had more to give.
Oh, that's interesting. There's a word for when you make space so the Holy Spirit can enter. And like it just makes me feel like if we don't empty out some of what we've been given, we don't have any space for that new like God. Like it's the same as I'm cleaning my closet or my room right now. Mars is hitting my moon Pluto, and so I'm like tearing down and rebuilding my whole studio and getting rid of all this stuff. And a friend said to me, he was like, "You have to get rid of stuff so that like God can come through some more." Like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
um yeah, so I think that's really real. Jenna, I mean, do you feel like you're about at that tipping point, or you've been at that tipping point for a while, Jenna? What do you think of that tipping point? Um, okay,
This
so
reminds me. This reminds me what you just said. So part of what I feel I have to give is a spiritual slash religious perspective, and I feel like I filled up with the astrological point of view, and I grew up being filled with the spiritual religious point of view, and it's like they've come together. And so what I actually have to offer, because of all that I've taken in, is tinged with this spiritual, religious, philosophical perspective. And what you just described is I would say is a universal truth. My teacher Stephen points out to this truth when he talks about Jupiter as the original ruler of Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, we talk about Jupiter and we talk about abundance and positive, positive, positive. But as the ruler of Pisces, the truth that you just mentioned is we have to let go of things. We have to release things to allow space for the new blessings to come in. And this is a fact that's directly related to abundance.
Yeah, that's well. It actually makes me think of this money book I read. It was like abundance with money or something. But it was saying that if you hold on to all your money, you have like you stop the flow. Like it's like you kind of like you want like money in some ways to come in and then come out because it's a flow thing. And the same with information. I mean, you're actually giving this like revelation today of like why students get to this point where they're tipping over and they feel like they have to get on screen, they have to get in front of the classroom, they have to, and they always feel guilty about it. Like I'm trying to like monetize my astrology all of a sudden or this or that. And it's like what I'm going to say to them in the future after this episode is I think you're full and you're needing to flow out, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a very beautiful thing, and that mean like if you don't give it you can't keep it kind of thing, like you're saying. So I
Yeah.
think it's actually a very revelatory idea, so thank you for that one.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense at the end of the year, you know.
So I have a question for you that's non-astrology related. Is wait, Jenna's saying Jupiter working through loss in order to make space for the new. Okay, I think that's a big concept here. So I actually have a question for you. This is more personal, but how do you do the presents as far as like gift giving to your six children? And do you give them similar things or different things according to their chart? Or like how do you approach the giving there? Do you give it all?
If they don't ask for anything, I don't give them shit. But if they ask, if they ask, if they ask, I do everything in my power to give what they ask for. But if they don't ask, I don't give.
Interesting. Is that because you don't want to waste energy on things that are not meaningful to them? Or why is that?
Well, I think in general, I realize I don't really give very much unless people ask. Because to me, when someone asks a question, it's an indication of receptivity. So it is, I think it is more efficient, much more efficient. And and also I do believe and I teach slash preach, ask and you shall receive.
Interesting.
So I try to support that with my kids. Is if you ask for something, I'm going to do everything in my power to give it to you, whether I got it or not. But if you don't ask, you know.
Is there
And I had a conversation with my 19-year-old daughter about this. We were in New York a couple of weeks ago at dinner, and she was semi complaining about my parenting style. You know, and I pointed out to her that the way I was raised and the values that are important to me is that my kids are as independent as possible. You know, I said my goal as a parent is that you guys don't need me anymore, that I'm useless. And she started to reflect on, our experiences growing up and how that's how I am. If she doesn't ask, then I'm not going to pretend or presume anything. But if she does ask, that's what turns everything on.
interesting. Well, I mean, from a development theory, it's like with my kid, she's 18 now, and it's like she's like, "Don't give me gifts," and so then people relentlessly give her gifts anyways, and it's like I'm actually respecting her and just be like, "Here's some cash." So that you can develop yourself. I mean, I think what I look at is gift giving should have in some ways to do with development. And I think it's interesting. I'm getting to the point with my students on our Tuesday class. Like when someone would ask me a question, I used to be very egalitarian and give it back to the group and say, "What does everyone think?" And now I'm to the point where I'm full of astrological remediation like information, and so it's like when they ask, I'm like, this is the answer to that, this is the answer to that, and I've started to be a lot more like you, where it's like if they ask I will just give it right there. Like I know I'm not trying to be this, so what do you think of that, of like as a teacher, when do you give it back to the room and when do you just take the question and just give it on your own?
I mean, to me, I get a sense if the question is for the room, then I'll tend to give it back to the room. If the question is for the individual, I will give it to the individual, but I'll still have, because I believe, especially if you're in a group, the image I like to use, probably not a nice one, but I imagine like AA meeting, okay? And people are sitting in the circle, and there's a table, and there's a box of donuts on the table, okay? And there's one person in the room that is right, might be a little bigger than the other people in the room, has less point of view about picking up a donut. And for some reason, this person eats 6 donuts and they're sitting there asking themselves, why did I eat 6 donuts? And to me, the answer is because there's 5 other people in there that wanted a donut but didn't have the courage to get up and go get it. So the one person in the room that picks up on that vibration is the one that's going to act it out. So in the group, typically there might be questions that people want to ask, but it comes through the person that's actually willing to ask the question. So I intuitively get a sense: is this a specific question for this person, or is this a question for the group? And I act accordingly.
Interesting. Okay, God, man, you're giving me a lot of information. These are really great Christmas presents. Okay, that's another one, which is I could intuit like this one. They just want to know the answer, as you know, versus okay, okay. Now here's another question. If anyone in the chat has a question for Ricky, please post it in the chat, or if you have any commentary or topics you want us to talk about. Okay, so here's one. What about with Lene? Like, do you all give each other gifts? And like, how do we do the equality of gift giving thing? You do have Pluto and Libra, so you know Mars
Yeah,
is of course hitting your moon square Pluto. So
yeah.
yeah.
So I've gotten her gifts in the past, but we typically don't give each other Christmas gifts. You
Hmm.
know, and I think the nature of our work is that we work together. Um, and to me, Linnea's second house as a second house sun, strongest planet is Mercury in the second house. So I have appreciated through the course of our relationship that things are important to her.
Hmm.
And so I don't give according to the holidays. I typically give according to how my sense of how frustrated she feels about our finances. You know?
Hmm.
And so for her, she decided at a young age that she wanted to have money. And so she went to law school and became an attorney and took so much pride in being able to pay off her student loans quickly. And even though her first husband came from a very wealthy family, her second long-term boyfriend came from a family of billionaires. So she always had this idea of, I have a backstop, but I also want to make my own stuff. And so I appreciate the importance of stuff. And when I realize, she's complaining about her computer, or, like a couple of Christmases ago, I was out shopping and I saw this beautiful, like, suitcase, carry-on suitcase, Louis Vuitton with fancy flowers over it. You know? And to me, when I saw it, I was like, this is gonna be the gift that keeps on giving. And every time we travel and she sees that bag, she's gonna feel really good about me and our relationship and our life. So I'm I'm very strategic about when it's time to give a gift, and typically that doesn't match up with holidays. If it does, I'll take advantage of it. But we don't do really birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, etc. for each other.
I'm totally with you. Like, I think astrologers are development theorists, at least in the best look at them. And it's like I give gifts that will develop either my relationship with the person, or okay. Here's the gift. Okay, spoiler alert, Shane might be listening, but okay, I found him this Star Wars piano book. He's a gamer, he's a dork, and he like loves Star Wars. But I found this piano book and I was like, oh, I can sit and play these Star Wars songs for him while he cooks dinner or whatever. And it's so I was like, I am getting that. But it's like, because it will develop our relationship. It's like something that will be the gift that gives on giving, and will create connection between us, and all these kind of things, right? So I think I'm very strategic in gifts too. Is like, will this develop a person? Will this develop our relationship? Will it develop some idea or concept within them? And I think that's where we go with that. Now, okay, what do you think about the concept? Now, hopefully, I'm not offending anyone with this idea. Have you heard of potlatching?
Like potluck?
No, potlatching. It's okay. Now I'm not saying I'm famous, but I'm not saying. But you did see my belt, okay? And so what I will say is, there was a point in my career where people started to give me gifts to get stuff from me. So potlatching is when people give you things to kind of bribe you to give them things back. You know what I mean? Whether it be, a student giving, this is like, would be like if you gave a corporation a gift. I mean, or they're like a CEO a gift to try to get something. It's a term where it's kind of a source of manipulation where people try to like buy you dinner in order to get like a free reading or like whatever it is. So I got to this point where like I won't accept money or gifts from people. Um, when I started dating Shane, he'd be trying to buy me dinner. I was like, no, thanks. I'll buy my own dinner. I'll misbehave later on my transit. Like
Yeah.
I reserve the right to have control of my decision. So what do you think of that concept?
So I feel like I'm oblivious to feeling obligated to return something, and I'm not necessarily proud of that, but I think it just comes from being famous and people just giving me stuff that sometimes I kind of expect it. And when I think of the exchange, part of it is I realize that it's called burgeoning, reflected glory, and that people just by association, right, that they're getting something back in return. So I don't really feel obligated if someone gives me something to return it because again, maybe I'm just completely full of myself. I feel like, but the way my mind works, if I'm interacting with someone, the only thing I'm thinking about is what can I do? How can I show up for this person? What can I give? What can I offer this person?
Interesting.
Um, and
Well,
I think people that appreciate it will want to hang around me, and people that don't, they won't want to hang around me. And so I
Well,
I
that's
like
a
it that
term I
way.
didn't understand, but that's exactly what you're dealing with when you are okay. It's called social capital too, where when you have like okay, so let's say I have 5,000 Facebook friends, and I'm working with somebody who has 231 Facebook friends. Okay, by association, I'm giving them something, but they don't. I don't know if they see it, but it sounds full of yourself to say that, but it's called social capital. I'm actually giving you a crowd of 5,000 people. I'm giving you a bunch of views. You know what I mean? That is capital, and it's also so it's a thing where like my producer, he has 9,000 Facebook friends, and I've always known that him talking to me is a gift. You know what I mean? And so I always drive him to the airport and do all this nice stuff for him. And at this point, after 10 years, we're pretty equal. As far as like our relationship, I don't feel like I need to do that for him much
Yeah.
anymore. But because I've given back to him as much as he's ever given to me, but I do think there is something about that. They're called tiers, where it's like when you work up tier, like somebody's working up tier, then you they are giving you a gift by working with you, and that's a hard thing to verbalize. But I think you just did it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right, when it's diffusion, right, we learned this in science, that when two people are around, right, and their auras are interacting with each other, whatever I have in excess, is gonna that you have less of is naturally gonna flow towards you, and vice versa. And I think when we say energy vampires, right, I don't think the person is consciously trying to suck us dry. It's just the nature of the diffusion that we feel that what we're getting from the person is a lot less than what we're giving to them. You
Wow.
know? And it's really, I think if we are sensitive enough to when we're around someone, that natural exchange of energy, and it registers as wow, it feels good to be around this person, or it doesn't feel that good to be around this person.
Wow, that is fascinating. Yeah, it's like it's like osmo. It's just there's a yeah, it's like a physics term when like there's a bunch of molecules over here and there's none over here, then they go over to this place where there is vacuous space. And I think that the kind of that's like off gassing. Like sometimes we off gas, and that's a form of giving. It's like we off gas help, or like we don't even know we're doing it. And I think it's so funny that you say this because I've always calculated this into my equations. Like with you, I sent you a lot of gifts when we first started working together, some chart bouquets, and I did whatever you call that, where I burge or I don't know, I did the thing where I was like, thank you for even talking to me. But over the time of us working together, now can't figure out the calculation because I feel like perhaps I give you as much as you give me, whether I'm not as famous as you, but I do produce the show and I put you in front of the crowd, and like I do all the things and get all the guests and like so plus in astrology I am I'm no small potato, so it's like in some ways I feel like there's this we're getting to that point where it's like it might be equilibrium, but I don't know if in your calculation that's true, and not that it matters, but I do.
Well, the way we met is I read remediation, and I reached out, and I started paying you to teach me, right? And I was already a practicing astrologer, but I saw extreme value in your perspective, you
Mm.
know? And we started, and you didn't know, and as we started to go, it kind of got to the point where it was like an evening out, and it felt kind of weird, to exchange money because we realized we were both getting fed from the relationship. And I want to talk specifically about money, okay? Because I believe that if I'm doing a good job consulting someone, putting them in touch with their chart, that one of the side effects should be that their more money starts to flow into their life. I had a mentor, I still have him, and he says, "Money's not the problem, you are." So I'm not making it about money, but I am making it about value.
Hmm.
Value. And if more of yourself, because the only thing that we can truly give is ourselves. And so if we have access to more of ourselves, it means we have more of ourselves to give. And if we find people that can appreciate what we have to offer, right, typically it's going to come back in some form of value. It doesn't always show up as ching, ching, ching dollars, but it does come back as value.
Well, that's the thing is like there's actually relationship theories that say that in order for a relationship to be equal, both have to give each other things that you value, that person values, and it's never the same thing. Right, it's like maybe you value just the conversation we're having, right? And I might value something else. Like I'm not really sure what is making this a win-win, but I think at Moyer Press we always work on win-win or no deal. Like if it's not a win-win, then we stop the deal, whatever it is, right? So we're always assessing value of like, is this, how is this, like Jenna's coming in and she's a new student to me, but also now kind of a friend because we're like doing some of the art videos together and stuff like that. And it's like I'm kind of doing that value calculation there of like, can we get this to an equal assessment of like, and it's hard because this isn't a dollars thing, like you're saying. It's a flow thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's like, so we try for like an infinity flow state, and that's kind of how we think of it in some ways too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to keep going with this, I think at the highest level of reaching our full potential is we live in a constant state of flow. And being in flow, but I think there's something there. Is there's no resistance, there's no barriers. We don't have to block anything. We can allow things to flow through us, and the things that are value to us will stick. And the things that aren't will just keep flowing. And the things that have value, I think the things that have value are just a version of ourselves. Because even when we're learning something, when someone teaches us something, it's not like they gave us new information necessarily. They just unlocked our access to a version of clarity or a version of truth.
Interesting. Well, and it's like, do you think the Pluto and Libra generation is? I feel like this generation is intensely interested in flow equality. I mean, you could call it equality, but I think you know it's like we're always fighting, and I have that Pluto on the North Node, so it's like if something's not equal flow, like it goes out the window. Like what do you think of that Pluto and Libra element?
Yeah, I think we're the ones that can't get away with not living in that kind of equal flow. And even if we're not conscious of it, even if our training tells us we're trying to get something from someone, I think Pluto and Libra, that's a wound and we will suffer from it. And I think those of us who are in touch with it, we can consciously move to deeper or more full expressions of that kind of equality. And one of the ways that my teacher teaches Pluto and Libra, one of the things he says about it that resonates very much with me is he uses the idea of equal relationships. And when Pluto enters a sign, again, Pluto doesn't enter a sign until every 250 years or something like that. So when Pluto enters a sign, Pluto ain't been in that sign for a long ass time. And that's what allows stuff to build up that needs to be released when Pluto finally comes into that sign. And the example that he uses is for a long time that relationships, and I'm talking about marriage type relationships, were rooted in survival, right? Ma needed Pa and Pa needed Ma, right? Because if Pa died, who's going to work? Well, who's going to make the money? And if Ma died, who's going to take care of the kids? Who's going to cook? Who's going to keep house? Okay. Again, old way of looking at things, but based on survival. And as we have more equality between the sexes, right, that the idea of what that equality looks like, it has to change. It has to be different. So we move through the 1900s, we get psychology, we get the unconscious, we get therapy, and people start to realize we get gender equality. People start to look at their relationships and they start to say, right, what am I getting out of this relationship based on what I'm offering?
Mhm.
Right? And I don't think we were really able to ask that question for a long time. So Pluto enters Libra, and the general divorce rate, at least in the US, jumps up like 20%. You
Mhm.
know, because this idea of the shadow of all of the things we've had to sweep under the rug to pretend that there was an equal exchange. And I think us born in this generation, we don't really have the ability to do that so well. You know?
It's interesting because there was the Neptune and Libra generation who kind of idealized the idea of equality. Like a lot of feminists came out of that generation. They have Pluto and Leo, so a lot of strong-hearted females fought there. And then the Uranus in Libra generation came in, kind of mixing up like what that looks like. It's not equality, it's equity, it's all this stuff. And now we're like intensely like working towards it. It's now, Jenna. You make the comment that Ricky was taking back his inner gold. Now, I didn't hear that part of the conversation, but can you explain in the chat what is the inner gold thing and what that is a really interesting idea. I just want to hear more about that. So sorry, I've never met your wife, so I'm get kind of curious. Does she have Pluto and Libra?
Yeah, she got Pluto and Libra. She sure does.
Okay, so she's on the same wavelength with that too.
Yeah, and her Pluto tightly opposes my Mars, Venus, and South Node
Oh, so she
conjunction.
does it a little bit later than you because
A
you're
little bit late. She's a year. She's about a year younger than I am.
dude, check this. Like Shane and I have Pluto North Node conjunct Libra conjunct each other because we're born a month apart. And so like we are intensely like everything is equal. Like I buy him a black rock beverage in the afternoon and he buys me a Coke at night during our meeting. Like we are like seriously into this equality factor. And like I find it I love the Pluto and Libra generation.
Hmm.
You know, I mean I think you and I started this show kind of talking about racism and trying to equalize things there, and like we kind of put that to bed really fast. And now we've moved on to other things because we're like, yeah, we definitely have equality at least in this generation, at least equality of thinking.
Yeah, I think about the failures in my past relationships, and for me, I could define them as being a lack of based on a lack in equality. You know,
Interesting.
it's like
Well,
my
the
my my
Pluto.
first wife. My first wife, she had Pluto and Virgo, and so she would conjunct the South Node in seventh house Sun. So she was super serviceful. You know?
No.
And it didn't work for me. I kept asking her to step up and be an equal, and it was really hard for her to. She's from the South, female from the South. It was really hard for her to conceptualize that and give herself permission to be an equal.
Yeah.
You know? Whew.
I find that with Shane too. He's a Sun in Virgo, Virgo rising, and he always takes the kind of service or he called himself a minion. And I was like, yeah, no thanks on that minion thing. But he has a Capricorn moon. I was like, you can be a service Viking if you'd like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that seems to work for us. But like, yeah, I don't. And I think when you're big, like you're big not only spiritually, you got a huge backbone, you got a Mars and Aries, plus you're big in society. I think you finding somebody who can step up and equal you, that's tough. I mean, you know,
yeah. Pluto and Libra in the first. According to Placidus. So I see that, and I'm not afraid anymore to. And I know that it's going to take people a while and it's going to blow their mind. But if I'm working with someone, like when I talk to my team, work stuff, I say, on this team, you have to see yourself as being the reason that we're successful. I don't care if you're the janitor or the water boy or whatever. Your mentality has to be the reason that we're successful is because what I bring to the table.
mm, interesting. Well, no, you and I are so alike in this factor. It's like I'm have a hard time finding people who will step up to the plate and hang out with me where I live. It's like I'm not trying to diminutize people, but they'll do it right to themselves. And I was like, I cannot downplay myself anymore. Like my chart is a fierce little thing. Like I wake up ready to go. You know what I mean? And like so, yeah, I think. And I got like fame manias. Like I'll be at the office. I'll be like, yeah, I'm famous. Like that's like my moon in Pisces in the 10th square Neptune. It like delusions on fame and shit. It's so funny. But Yeah, I think it's hard when you have to diminutize yourself. That is really terrifying. Um,
Especially if you're intensely passionate about equality, because right is because we will make bring ourselves down to create a sense of equality. And to me, I've learned to, instead of bringing myself down, to invite people to step up.
Interesting, interesting. Maybe that's one of the reasons you and I do feel like you and I are equals. And I think part of it's because like I'm as grandiose as you are. You know what I mean? I'll be like, so anyway, the one I was more
Perfect.
famous than Ricky, that was pretty cool. Like, but it's just that's just my Mars square. That's just my chart acting out. It's not even like I'm trying to do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, um, that's
But
kind of
to a
funny.
certain extent, I would call that an expression of what we are talking about. Because even if it's not conscious and the person doesn't verbalize the invitation to step up, right? The diffusion thing is we'll feel unconsciously we'll feel called to act in different ways depending on who we're around. And I'm saying that's an effect of this equalization of the two fields or the two auras interacting with each other. And
Well, sorry.
no, please go ahead. Yeah.
Well, it comes down to the yoking thing, the equal yoking, right? When you're a huge oxen, and just whether it be in your own mind or actually real, like how are you going to find another huge oxen? And I think with you being on the football teams, at least you were next to people who were as big as you. I mean, I think, don't you think there's something nice about playing with people your own size? I mean, but maybe they
You're
weren't spiritually your size though.
it's yeah, like you said, it's in physically size. We have different sizes of football players, but they're in football it manifests as grit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the term I would use. It's kind of, I think Saturn and Mars come together and give us grit, and to have people that match your level of grit, on a team or in doing anything difficult, it's so important. It's so important, and whether we realize it or not, we, especially when we're interacting with someone, is we are yoked, right? The diffusion thing, that there's information going back and forth between us when we're thinking about another person in another person's presence. Is we can't exist. We don't have the ability to exist in a vacuum, and we're constantly being fed and feeding others. And I think in coming
Sorry, you froze there for a sec. Well, so okay, so Jenna has talked about this like idea of inner gold, and she was saying when we look for someone to be like our mentor or guru, then we're like, will you hold our inner gold? She's saying, so when you asked me to teach your remediation, you saw value and you wanted that, but then you held his inner gold until he was ready to take it back, is what she's saying, and then we would be more of an equal. But this actually brings up a concept I do want to address, which is the grandiosity that it takes to be a teacher. Or no, I don't like the term guru, right? But it's like, to be a spiritual teacher, you have to have some kind of level of, I guess, grit in some ways, if to use the word you're using. But it's like, how do we equalize the student teacher relationship where we're giving them a lot, but they're also giving back? I mean, students where I feel like it's an equal relationship, there's just something there. They have what it takes to rise up, or like what makes a good equal student teacher relationship.
Yeah. So I want to make a comment about the inner gold that's connected to this. Is I don't I wouldn't call it inner gold. I would call it inner gold in process. And I'm using alchemy is you have to have the right combination of the right metals, right, all purified, that come together that produce the inner gold. And I think one of the main ingredients or the main factors we need to create the inner gold are teachers, our mentors, is that's an ingredient. So I wouldn't say holding it back, but realizing in order for that gold to turn into gold, that I recognize the ingredients that I needed. And so I think this is also part of the student teacher relationship. And for me, what the student gives back is that they take so lunar, that they take what we're pouring into them and they grow because of it. It's like when I go outside and I water my garden, what my garden gives back to me, right, comes from what I put into it. And if it can take the water and the love and it can turn into juicy fruit that nourishes me and the people around me, oh, perfect. And so when I pour into students, all that I want for them to do is take whatever I'm pouring into them that they can handle and internalize it and allow it to grow, allow it to feed their inner goals. But to me, the first thing that someone has to have is this idea or this image of the potential of their inner gold and see how I can contribute to that process. To me, that is the greatest gift that a student can give to the teacher.
Interesting. Huh. So you think okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think one of the just to add on to what you're saying, I totally that's its own point. I think there's something about I like when students backbone. Like I want to be like, you're a backboning so hard, which is when they are not, they don't call me a narcissist for being as grandiose as because that's what I feel like weak-willed people do is call me a narcissist. And I'm like, why don't you pull up your narcissist pants and get out on the field? Like I actually hang with the best of the best. Like if I didn't have my narcissist pants on, I wouldn't even be at work today. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like the narcissist insult for being grandiose is like we're not on the same playing field if you have to insult me for just being like big basically.
Yeah.
So
So
I like go ahead.
I need to make a statement about that because when you use the word narcissist and how other people call other people narcissists, that infuriates me. It's like I can feel the fire burning up. And when my teacher Gary, my mentor Gary, he always says you can only accuse people of doing what you yourself are doing. Right. So if you're a person and you have a habit or a tendency to call other people narcissists, please, before you do that, take a deep long in the mirror and have zero doubt that you are a narcissist. Okay? Because to me, anytime someone is name calling, it's just a matter of manipulation or control. Because there is nothing. I don't even care if you're your damn parents. There's nothing that makes you be in a relationship with me. So instead of calling me names, get the fuck out of my life.
Yeah, that's exactly how I am. It's like as soon as someone calls me a narcissist, I was like, you might as well turn around and walk away because I don't even like you anymore. Like because it's like, is that all I am? I was like, did I also show up on Facebook for the last 15 years daily? Did I like? I'm like, do you want to list the things I also am? Like it's like. But I think it's a contagious thought form. It's like a meme. Like and people sling that one around when you're being too big. And I think that's when they feel like they can't get up to that equalized level, they then start insulting you. And I think that shows that they're not at the same level. I mean,
well, not at the same level, but to me, that's a form of narcissism, right? Is that they're so full of themselves that they're afraid to make a fucking mistake. So the people that are willing to put themselves out there, they have to make them wrong.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I find makes people equal to me when they're students is when they're confident, when they're not afraid of me. Like that's number one. A lot of students are like, oh no, what if I insult her? What if she gets mad? And I'm like, what if you just hang out with me and just chill with me and we can be fine, Oh my god, my friend Susan's here. Susan. Oh, anyway. Yeah, Susan, you're a beautiful person too. Susan and I used to play a lot of dominoes together. She knows me in the game realm where I'm not like showing off. um but yeah, okay, that's so interesting that you have a similar response to the narcissism insult too. I'm just like, you're mad at me for being too good. I hate that insult. God.
Well, see, I think because of what I just said, no one calls me a narcissist to my face, and I'm guessing they do behind my back. But just when I hear other people describe other people as narcissists, I'm saying, what makes you? If you're going to call someone a name, why are you even in their life? Because we don't realize when we call people names. We talked about giving and receiving. What are you giving someone by calling them names and tearing them down? You're not giving them anything.
Yeah, you're taking from them.
You're taking from them.
If someone calls you a name, they're taking your mental space and forcing you to analyze whether or not you're a good person. I think, yeah. So I think the biggest thing that equalizes teacher and student is confidence in some ways. I mean,
a confidence. I call it responsibility. Because the nature of a teacher student is that the assumption is that there's something that the student can learn from the teacher, and there's something that the teacher can give to the student. And I think if both people appreciate that and they're both being fed in that way, then it works. But if I'm calling someone a teacher and I don't have the ability to learn from them, then they're not really a teacher.
Interesting.
No, because that flow cannot happen. And if I have a student and whenever the student asks a question, I just get annoyed and I can't offer them insight, then I'm not really a teacher.
Now, are you friends with some of your students?
I would consider myself friends with all of my students.
Okay, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel similarly. Sometimes my students think I send them too many like little crocheted animals in the mail. I'm like, but you're my friend though. Like, I feel like being in the room with people does help get to know them, and that does create like a friend environment. Um, so
But also, I think for the information to go in, there has to be something soft. There has to be something soft that I'm gonna call friendship. And in astrology, we look to the 11th house for friendship and long term goals. And I call allies, right? People where our long term goals are aligned. And if your long term goal is to learn whatever I have to teach, and my long term goal is that you learn whatever I have to share, then we're allies. And that in itself makes us friends, at least in an astrological sense.
so what? Okay, so what if someone gives you shit?
So
I
if
feel like that might have happened on the football team.
yeah, the guys give each other shit all the time. Um and and I think at least on a football team, it's part of the camaraderie. Because the nature of a football team is the other team is going to give us shit. And if we have to test to see that we each can handle, we can receive shit and do something with it. And anytime you're in some kind of combat or conflict or competition, right? That one way to describe it is how can you handle the other person's shit and overcome it. So I think in a context where that's what you're trying to do is overcome obstacles or difficult things, and it's like two puppies, fighting each other, training each other, or sparring partners, boom, going back at each other. Is the context of giving and receiving is, do I have the ability to receive and benefit from what you're giving me? And if the orientation and the agreement is you give me shit and it makes me better at dealing with shit, right, then there's an exchange, a meaningful exchange.
Well, Susan's here, and we used to play dominoes, and you should have seen Dom Crew. We gave each other like table talk is a thing, and it's like when you're on the and you're just, and I think there's something beautifully martial about giving each other shit. Like it's like differentiative giving. It's like I'm gonna poke at you so we can be together, and I do think there's something beautiful. I noticed this with my kid, when she feels like too close, like I can kind of feel auras, right? So it's like when I feel her aura getting like uncomfortably close, and she starts giving me shit. Like that's kind of like what happens. It's like in the idea that the moon is like the night sect of planet, and then the Venus and Mars kind of work together. Like Venus pulls people to us, and Mars pushes them away. I feel like when you give someone shit who you're really close to, you're like, can you get it back a little bit farther? Because I can't keep giving if we're this close, this uncomfortably close. So in some ways, I feel like it's like giving and receiving management is like this giving each other shit kind of thing.
Yeah, I have Venus conjunct Mars, and I do think Venus is the planet of gifts, giving and receiving gifts. And I will say, most of my students, I give them shit. You know, I I I give them shit, but it's almost like when they talk shit, right? It's an
You give it
exchange.
right back to him.
I
It's
give it
an
right back to
equality
them.
thing.
Exactly. You got it. You got it.
That's the thing as a teacher. Like, okay, so like basically, one of the things I do is like I do parody with my students. It's like if they're in a mood, if they're in a Mars transit and they start going at me like on a concept or they want to debate or I'm like, okay, are we debating? Let's go. Like I give it right back to them. What I don't do is shrink and say like, oh no, they gave me shit. I'm uncomfortably small now. I keep my backbone, and like now we're still giving to each other, but we're giving each other Mars energy. And I think it is a gift to
Like that.
table talk, or like Dom Crew had the best fun when we were like giving each other shit. I mean, so I think being shrunken by being, you know, Mars on a little bit, that's not the role of a teacher. I think the role of the teacher is to go at the Mars, like, are we Marsing? Are we being Venusian? Are we Marsing? But it's like the equality factor is part of the gift of a good teacher, I think.
Yeah. And I'll tell my students I have that powerful Mars Venus conjunction. And part of what I give, right, in order to receive it, you have to be able to tolerate that Mars. And if you can't, then I'm probably not a very good teacher for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's funny because on the Facebook channel, people we have this Facebook actors document that we send out to people who want to act with us, and I'm like, I encourage you to get in fights on Mars transits and all this stuff. We will be happily fighting with you, and everyone's a little bit shocked at first. I'm like, we do all the transits here. We're not trying to just give and receive joy and bubbles. Like it depends on what the planets are giving. The planets
I
give
love
us
it.
shit. You know what I mean?
I love it. And we're talking about giving and receiving. I think we could bring it down to our relationship with the planets in our chart because the planets are constantly giving. Do we have the ability to receive? You know?
The planets do constantly give, they give gravitational amounts of chi that runs through us, and that's interesting to say. What is causing all the giving? Every movement of a planet gives you energy. The sunlight gives you energy in your eye. The sun gives to us, and if we don't give out, then we're just being stuck in flow.
And I'd say quite literally when we're experiencing a transit, the transit is the transiting planet giving to the natal planet. And it's if the natal planet can receive and do something with it, then it tends to work out. If the receiving planet blocks or can't receive, then that's what brings in the difficult experiences in our life. It's not that Mars is doing something or Saturn is doing something to us. It's our inability to receive the energy and do something constructive with it. And
Do you,
sometimes we've had bad examples that we're not supposed to receive this type of energy, which means we're not supposed to be able to do anything with it. And I think that's crippling.
Do you know that? Okay, so one of the things with Jupiter problems, like in remediation theory, like Jupiter squares, is like a person will be like too, like if they have a Venus square Jupiter, they might drink too much, right? Or they might eat too much sugar, right? Well, the thing is, the remedy for these squares to Jupiter are like over giving or extreme giving. And and I learned about the in some tribes, they say that the people who are the highest in the tribe are the ones who give the most. And I think
Yeah.
we don't have a language in in our society of like, you can give presents to all your friends ubiquitously, and you can just be an over giver as a lifestyle choice. People see that as detrimental, but the planets keep giving us energy, and without pouring it out, then we end up drinking too much or like so. What do you think about the transmutation of overabundance or overindulgence with then overabundance?
The image I got when you brought this up, and a lot of people have negative opinions about this, but something growing up in church, is every day in church they pass the
Mhm.
offering around, and typically most religious organizations talk a lot about charity and a lot about giving. Huh? And I have noticed, and something that I've reflected on in my own life, that too much Jupiter can be indiscriminate giving, you
Mhm.
know. But I think of true Jupiter are things we give to the things we contribute, and we give to the things that we believe in. So whether it's an idea, a concept, a principle, a person, by investing in that thing and seeing it expand and seeing it grow, that to me that's the heart of generosity. And this relates to as teachers, right? Is that I see, for me, I press my students to have a point of view or a philosophy about life, about how it works. Because I've realized if they don't have that, I kind of really don't have anything of value to give them. Because insights, to me, if they can't fit into a larger worldview or philosophy, right, they just ultimately confuse people. You know?
Mhm.
So I do think that there is an art to generosity, to giving. And I can look at in my life a lot of Jupiter giving, but indiscriminate giving. And the way I've shifted is thinking about what are the things that I truly believe in that I'd like to see grow and expand in the world.
It's so interesting. I love that delineation between indiscriminate giving and very discriminate giving. It's like a lot of if we give very meaningful gifts that are built to someone's chart or that are very meaningful to them, that's very different than just like giving, I don't know, something to somebody that they don't care about or they don't want, that is like clutter to them. I think that's a really Yeah, that's a good thought there. Well, we have 4 minutes. Is there
But
anything on your mind? Oh, go ahead.
well, just the last piece of there's a term that we don't use it so much anymore, but especially for artists, it used to be used a lot. But a benefactor, you
Oh,
know, a benefactor, right? Someone wealthy who invest in the arts and invest in artists, commission pieces, right? That they believe in beauty or they believe in the artist and what they have the ability to do, and it used to be a thing, and it amongst wealthy people we can still see it, but this idea of being a benefactor. What in the world would I like to see grow and expand, and what do I have that I can contribute to that growth and expansion?
yeah. That's really interesting. I call it being a sugar mama. No, no, kidding, not kidding. Like I always tell Billy, my producer, I'm like, so anyway, since I'm your sugar mama, like, but no, I do think, yeah, a benefactor. On a really serious note, though, there is something very much about, that's people always think that if you go after resources that you're like a materialist. And what I find, I have Mars and Jupiter in my second house, and so I am like a fighter about money, like. But also, I'm a philanthropist with my Jupiter there, so it's like I do support young astrologers coming up and young people coming up, and like I do like to be a benefactor to the arts, and I think um, that is very Jupiterian. That is something that you can give is a flow. It's flow. I mean, flow is really what we give. This has been such a good topic. Jenna says indiscriminate giving could be an explanation for Jupiter being in detriment in Gemini. Interesting. Um, okay, we have 2 minutes, Ricky?
Well,
Anything?
I want to make a comment about that. So I have to call this one out. Okay. Oh, if you're going to make a statement like that, you have to make it make sense. It's not just dogma. You can't say Jupiter in detriment. You have to really think deeply about why did the ancients say that Jupiter was the detriment and Gemini, and what about Jupiter expressing through Gemini might create the negative things that we indiscriminate giving, etc. Right.
Mhm.
And this is another comment that I think is important to make about detriment and any kind of discord in a chart, is that a birth chart is a birth chart. It's where we start. And if you're looking at someone later in life and they've grown and they've had experiences, you shouldn't see manifesting in their current life expressions of the detriment. You should see it in their life story, right? And an example of that is Gemini is about curiosity. So it's about I'll give here, I'll give here, I'll give here, I'll give here, I'll give here. Hey, how about there? I'll give there, I'll give there. But over the course of time, if you're giving to all these places, which as a young person it might seem indiscriminate, over time you realize, oh, when I gave there, it seemed to work better. When I gave there, it didn't work so well. So over time, that detriment, right? It actually becomes a gift, because when someone gives, it's not based on giving the right way all the time. It's based on their own experiences of giving to all these different places and learning what is the place that is going to be most meaningful for me to give from my own personal experience. Okay. I have to say that because when we just throw detriment and all these things around, you have to put it in the context of someone's life story. And as soon as someone is born with the planet in detriment, they start attracting experiences, and those experiences give the person the ability to learn and grow and outgrow the discord of the placement. And we have to keep that growth mindset if we're going to help people doing this kind of work.
All right, time out, time out. It's time. It's time. Thank you for coming to church, Ricky.
Thank you for inviting me. This is great.
I can't tell who the pastor is. It's all of us. Everyone here is a pastor. Jenna, thank you for backboning with us. Susan, it was great to see you. Love you, girl. And Ricky, we'll see you next week on New Year's Eve.
Yes, perfect. Oh, can't
Bye.
wait for that one. Yeah, New Year's resolutions, huh?
No, we're gonna have random questions thrown at us. Actually,
Even better.
yeah. Spoiler
Even better.
alert. Okay.
All right.
Bye.